Today, we're diving into something, well, something pretty dark. We're not just talking about cruelty. We're talking about how cruelty gets engineered. We're going to unpack how humans build these incredibly complex, deliberate systems of pain, and maybe even more importantly, how those systems somehow become normal.
Right. This is the big one. This is the central question we're really going to dig into. How do you take raw violence and turn it into something structured, something systemic, and in a lot of ways, something much, much more terrifying? So to get our heads around this, let's make a really key distinction first. Think about a bear in the woods. If it attacks another animal, it's brutal, for sure, but it's instinct. It's usually about survival, and hey, the other animal can fight back. What we're talking about here is totally different. It's a calculated cruelty where the victim has absolutely no way out, zero recourse, because the entire system is designed to make sure of that. So how do you even start building a system like that? Well, the source material we're looking at argues that the foundation isn't bricks or steel. It's not a weapon, it's language. Let's dig into how simple words become the actual blueprint for creating pain.
Yeah, exactly. How does that happen? And we're not just talking about insults or threats here. We're talking about how abstract concepts, laws, and rules, all built with words, are weaponized to create the formal structures that make suffering on a huge scale not only possible, but justifiable.
And this quote just nails it. Look at the language here. By consensus, an agreement. Words create a shared understanding, a legal and moral framework that allows cruelty to happen, and for the people doing it to feel like it's totally legitimate. It's not chaos, it's a concert. It's organized.
And check this out. This is a perfect example of the sneaky power of language. Take the word sanction. It literally means two opposite things at the same time: punishment and permission. And that kind of ambiguity, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It gives you the cover to frame an action as both a legitimate approval and a righteous penalty.
So here's the bottom line on this section. Language builds what the source calls the artifice. It's the official structure, the paperwork, the legal code, the rule book. It's the whole thing that takes a single, fleeting act of violence and stretches it out into something prolonged, systemic, and totally inescapable.
All right, so with that blueprint, language, firmly in place, we can now look at how the actual machine of cruelty gets built. We've seen the plans, now let's check out the engineering.
Okay, so the starting point for this machine is a basic principle that most societies are built on. The state, the government, the collective, whatever you want to call it, has the exclusive right to use force. You and I generally can't, but the state can. It has a monopoly on violence.
And this is where the sinister genius comes in. The source material points out that these systems create loopholes. They essentially allow certain people to become shareholders in the state's monopoly. You get to invest in that power and use the state's authority to inflict your own brand of cruelty, all while hiding behind the cover of official approval.
You can basically break it down into 3 steps. First, the state sets up its monopoly. Second, it starts delegating that power out through these little branches or sanctioned exceptions. And finally, individuals exploit those branches. Suddenly, their personal sadism isn't just their own sick hobby anymore. It's state-approved action, and they face zero consequences for it.
To really appreciate how unnatural this all is, the source contrasts it with the wild. The jungle is brutal, sure. It's chaotic, it's random. But there's no system deliberately tilting the scales. The fight is still, at its core, subject to chance.
And that is the key difference. These human systems of cruelty are an artificial shell. They're like a locked stadium where the fight is rigged from the very beginning. The whole point is to make cruelty predictable, efficient, and for the poor soul trapped inside, completely inescapable.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint, and we've got the machine. But what powers it? We have to ask, what's the psychological fuel that keeps this whole infernal engine running? This is where we shift from the how to the why. I mean, it's one thing to understand the mechanics, but it's another thing to try and get your head around why anyone would want to create and maintain these structures that are designed for one thing: to inflict pain. The sources point to some profoundly dark places. It's not always about power or ideology. Sometimes it's just raw sadism, getting pleasure from someone else's pain. Sometimes it's a deep-seated desire to just destroy things. And maybe the most insidious reason of all is simple envy. This quote really gets to the heart of that envy. It's not just wanting what someone else has. It's the rage of someone who has lost something they can never get back, maybe youth or innocence or an opportunity. And so they're driven to destroy that very thing in other people. The system itself becomes a weapon to wipe out what its operators can no longer have.
We've seen the blueprint, the machine, and the fuel. So now, let's turn to the devastating end result of all this. The reality for the people who are actually trapped inside this architecture of pain.
You know, one of the most chilling things about these systems is the total disconnect they create in perception. For an outsider, or for someone pulling the levers, an act of unimaginable cruelty can be shrugged off. It's trivialized, dismissed as just a comedic blip.
But for the victim, that same moment is anything but a blip. It is an all-consuming personal hell. The source uses this incredibly powerful phrase, a space-time perdition, a moment where your entire reality just collapses into pure suffering. That's how effective the system is. It can make one person's eternity of torment look like a passing joke to another.
And this structure creates this awful, vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. The comfort and order for the lucky ones is literally built on top of the misery of the unlucky. The system hurts someone, and when that person inevitably breaks down from the pain, their breakdown is then used as proof that they deserved it in the first place. It's a perfect trap.
This entire perfectly engineered system leads to one final, haunting observation from the source material, and it brings us right back to where we started, the power of words. Specifically, the power of the words we don't have.
Think about it for a second. We have a word for a perfect, imagined world, right? An ideal, a utopia. But what's the specific word for the opposite? I don't just mean a bad place. I mean a perfectly engineered system of misery that we build on purpose. So this is a thought I want to leave you with. If our language allows us to construct these hellish architectures piece by piece, but it doesn't give us a single specific word to describe the finished product, is that just an accident? Or is that missing word the final, most brilliant piece of the entire cruel design?